Alright, so I thought I'd make this video talking about Crusader Kings 3. I've been playing it quite a lot lately. In the past 2 weeks, I've got 119 hours or so, and like maybe like 200 on record total. So overall, I think that the game is obviously enjoyable. I've put in a lot of time to it, but more than that, it's just like there's so much that you can do in the game that it feels like every playthrough you learn something new, or every time you end up getting to the end date, or like falling out with your house, that you gain some kind of insight into the game that's valuable and helps you on your next run, and I think that's really cool. um, so like some of the pros, I'd say it has amazing graphics. I think that the graphics for a strategy game of this size is pretty abnormal. Like if you look at like Civ, for example, the graphics are good, but they're not like on the same level. Or like Total War, same thing. Like the graphics are good, but not quite as good, I'd say, overall. And then you can also look at how big the map is in this game. It's absolutely insane how many starting positions there are, just because when you start a new game, you can start from any of the civilizations, or you can create your own, which is pretty cool. And when you create your own, you can choose some perks and some traits to start out with to help you out, or you can just pick one of the already established houses that are on the map, and then from there it just kind of expands exponentially, because then you've got the religion. So every single religion in this game has multiple paths. So like Christianity has like Catholicism, they have the Adamites, and then you have like different forms of Buddhism, different forms of religions, or like pretty much all the Abrahamic religions, and then a lot of the Eastern ones as well. And I think that there's enough variety that anybody would be able to pick from an established religion. And even if you don't, you can create your own religion. Like that's not historically accurate. You can make it so that witchcraft is the go-to, or you can make it so that it's matriarchy instead of a patriarchy. You can make it equal. You can do a lot of things with the religions that actually add a lot of immersion to the game and can aid or hinder you. You can make, polygamy a tenet of your religion, or you can make it so that only men can be clergy, whereas like in Catholicism, I believe it starts out that it prefers men but women are allowed, and then same with the inheritance, is it prefers men but women are allowed. You can make it only men, you can make it only women, you can make it equal. There's a lot of diversity as far as that goes. And then you go into the cultures, which is also pretty great, because you have the option, if you're the culture head, and presumably you normally would be, especially if you create a starting area that has a lot of options around you to expand quickly. You should always probably be the culture head of your culture. And if you're not, it's fine. The AI picks pretty good, I think, but you're able to pick a lot of traits, and I think that the traits themselves are super interesting, because you can create a really war focused culture, and then it'll help you with that. Or you could make it so that you just want to heavy go into the way that your succession works, and then you can focus that so that you don't have to do the starting, which is the partitioning, and that can actually kind of mess you up. But if you want to focus that, or go into like a civics focus, then you can start building heavily. There's a lot of options there. And then kind of playing into that, you also have your house and your renown, where you open up your legacies, and then you have a lot of options there. And from those legacies, it creates almost like a roguelike kind of experience, where you can fail in trying to expand into this huge empire, but you know that the next time that you're able to like kind of stabilize and then try it again, you have all these really really awesome perks that you got, because your family's renowned and all the stuff that you did building that initial empire. And I think that that adds a lot of that replayability to it, or at least it makes you want to continue, because it's not like, oh, I failed in creating this empire, now I only have a county, what's the point in continuing? It's like, no, you can actually expand again, and it's going to be easier this time because of those legacies that you've accumulated. And then obviously then you have like the current character specific ones, where you have like the perks and the lifestyle focuses, and they offer a lot of unique ways of playing. So like you get the diplomacy lifestyle. Then you can go down a perk tree, for example, that might make it easier for you to vassalize people, so you don't have to worry about going to war, or you can go down the martial lifestyle, and then you can just go to war with everyone and try to conquer as many people as you can. So there's a lot of variety there. I mean, you can go into the stewardship and then get a lot of money and just build up your core duchy or county that you're in, to really establish yourself, so that if people try to attack you, it's a lot harder, and then you have a really good foundation to attack other people from. I think that and even if you your player error that you get next isn't really the focus you want, you don't have to go down their like learning path. You can choose your own. You can reset their perks. But I think really trying to diversify how you play the game is a really good strategy going into this, and I think that it kind of offers that as a legitimate way to play the game. That it really adds to kind of the immersion, because it makes it feel like every character feels a lot different. Even if they're your child, they could have a completely different lifestyle, or you might get those traits. So every character has like, I think it's 3 to 4 traits that they get growing up, and those can greatly influence how you play the game. So, if someone is gregarious, it might be better to host more feasts because it reduces their stress more, and they can befriend people easier. But if they're shy, it creates kind of a detriment to hosting the feast, because then you increase your stress. If your stress gets too high, then you're gonna die. And I think that these huge swings that you sometimes get is really fun. It makes it so that you want to learn the best way to play every kind of person, and then you're kind of like changing on the fly as you go. And you can learn really like what are the good paths and the bad paths to go through. But I think that even those change pretty often based on what's happening. So if you're going down the stewardship focus, then it might make more sense at the time to go down the administration tree, because you can make it so that your vassals are less likely to join an independence faction. But let's say that you're already an established ruler, and you don't have to worry about your vassal's opinion of you, and it's really easy for you to keep them in like a state of not going to war against you. Then maybe you can go down the architect or the avaricious tree, because then you get more money, and then you can use that to increase your influence, go to war, or build more stuff in your capital, or just in other duchies and counties that you control. And just that like ability to make a decision on the fly and kind of live with those consequences, really I think lends pretty well to the overall gameplay that you get. And even within those, you have other ways of like controlling people. So you could just have like a full diplomacy focus. Like, I'm going to have all of my focus be on making sure that my vassals don't want to attack me. I'm going to put my chancellor onto the domestic affairs, and I'm going to sway and uh, give gifts to all of my vassals so that they don't attack me. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. It's probably the most often thing I do when a new player heir takes control, because that's usually the biggest time that people want to attack. But it's not the only way. You could increase your dread very quickly by doing like acts of tyranny and stuff. And if you have some of the traits, say in the martial tree or in the intrigue tree, it makes playing in that tyrannical kind of way a really viable way to do it. And it makes it interesting. Like, you can be a good guy, you can be a bad guy, you can be somewhere in the middle, and you can do all of that in a single playthrough, because you're gonna play through multiple characters' lives, and it's a lot of fun just switching it up every once in a while. You don't have to just like play through the whole entire game as one kind of character. And we like, if you've played long running kind of like RPGs like Divinity, you kind of feel like that. But in this game, you get to taste all the varieties of life here. And then I think another interesting thing is how you do the transitions of power. So your succession can be based on a confederate kind of partition, and then there's like 3 of those where it's either, or there's 3 types of partitions. One is the confederate, but anyway, like, those can be either good or bad depending on what you want to do. So and they're what you start out with. So you really only start out with the confederate partition usually. I mean, some of the cultures have different ones, but if you start in the 800s, then those are the you're going to have to stick with the Confederate partition until you can do some of the researching in your culture to get the other types of partition, and then even later on, then to go past that and get the different types of single realm heirs, which are probably the easiest to transition through. But you can also add laws to make it so that there's voting on the succession, and those are also dependent on your culture. So there's a lot of ways that that happens, and I think that adds a lot of strategy to even the succession part of the game. So it's not just like, oh, I have strategy in my domestic affairs, I have strategy in my foreign affairs. I have strategy in even how succession takes place in my realm, and I think that is a pretty immersive way that the game works, and I'm glad that it's in the game, and all these different ways that they've added to make it so that you can, for example, if you have it on Confederate partition and you're like, this could be bad, I don't want my empire and my kingdom to go just split randomly, then you can make it so that both of those are voted on, and then you can influence the way that those votes happen so that your player heir gets to be the next one that inherits those titles that you want them to. And I think those are probably the greatest parts of, as at least as far as strategy goes. Then you have the health system, which I think is pretty deep, where you can have like morbidities, like you could be obese or you could be insane, and then those kind of also add a lot of these random events to impact how you play. Um, and there are a lot of random events. I mean, I don't even think I've seen all of them. I know recently I learned that you can get a cat and a dog just starting out as like a little kid, and those are some of the options. But a lot of those player identity diversities are really good. Also, I think it's really interesting how they implemented the sexual orientation in the game, being able to have characters on a distribution that matches reality, so you can, it kind of gives you a perspective into what it might have been like for some of these people back, in the 800s or 1300s or whatever. And when most of the religions in the game prosecute these orientations, it adds a real sense of how hard it must have been. But like I said, with the ability to create your own religion, you can more or less circumvent that problem completely, if you're able to found your religion early and get it off the ground in a big enough area. And those are the different ways of playing the game that I think make it really, really interesting. Now, um, some of the cons of the game, I'd say, mostly come from the war, and I think it's too simplistic in its execution. I understand that they want it so that you don't have to like do any super kind of like micro um, controlling of your characters like it's like StarCraft or something. But I think it could be a little bit better in the way that they implemented war. So if you have a men at arms that like does something, like if you have like one for sieging or you have like horsemen, as far as I know, you have to split that entire group off of the main one if you want it to go. You can't like cut a group in half. You have to keep the entire group together. And I think that might have been for balance reasons. I'm not sure, but that feels unrealistic in a sense. And there's other things too, like there's no ambushing. Like I think if you look at Total War, if you completely removed how Total War does like the micromanagement of troops, when you go into battle against like another army or you're sieging a castle or something, I think that it has a really good system for like ambushes or like how you can like create armies and stuff like that. So I think that's like the biggest drawback is how simplistic the armies are. If you were hoping to have like be like this huge mega commander of this super awesome army, with just like your levies and your knights and whatever men at arms you put together, it's not really going to happen. Like there are a lot of cool dynamics, like you have like the men at arms counters, and then you have like your commander bonus, and that kind of stuff is really really good. But I wish that there was a way to have something to make it feel more more like real, like a real kind of strategy for war would be. Like, there's no way for me to secretly sneak like a small group of people around to like ambush a group from the back. It's kind of too simplistic in that sense, where everything else in this game seems super involved. And I'm sure that the dice rolling and the numbers that go into this are super complex. But on their surface, it's really just like, oh, does this enemy get countered by mine, or do I get countered by theirs? Okay, um, I guess I probably shouldn't take this fight. And it even tells you like, oh, you're probably gonna win, or you're probably gonna lose, or this is kind of even. And even when it's even, you can really be like, well, I kind of outnumber him a lot, so it should win. And it feels like there's not a lot of extra strategy you can do when it comes to those situations. You're kind of just like, well, I lose this fight or I don't. And that's kind of the worst part of it, I think. And then another thing that I think is a little kind of bothersome is the how the random events are seem to be pretty often the same. And I know that that's kind of inevitable if you play the game enough. Of course, you're gonna learn all of the random events. I know that I said earlier that there are a lot that and some that I have probably not even seen yet, but the ones that you get all the time, you'll really get into it and you'll be like, yeah, I know exactly what I want to pick here. And sometimes you'll be surprised with like, I have really high intrigue here, so I can do this, or I have really high stewardship here, or so I can do this. But overall, you kind of just get really used to what you are going to pick in most of those situations. And I don't know what they could do, but I wish that it was a little bit more diverse from that aspect. And I think that's pretty much all the major cons. I think overall the game is pretty amazing. I've played it a lot and I'll keep playing it. One thing I haven't really tried is the multiplayer, so I can't really speak too much on that. I do plan to get into that, and when I do, I'll might make a video on that, just detailing how different it is from like the single player kind of campaign. But yeah, overall, great game. If you're into strategy games, you don't really, if you like those kind of games where you don't have to micromanage, you can pause it, you can do everything on a single screen, and then you can just go and play it how you want. You don't have to worry about, oh, I'm not very good at like clicking the buttons in the right order. This is a really good game, and I think most people could probably enjoy it as long as they can get over the huge learning curve that obviously comes from a huge strategy game like this. Thanks. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe and follow me on Twitch. I'll put those details down in the description. Thanks for watching.